Yeah, keep.
And we are, the recording's paused right now. So once you,
Okay.
and
So I'd like
Kathy,
Yes.
as before you start the meeting, I'm at the offices and we do have two members of the public here in my office, not in my office, but in the conference room.
Okay.
One's going to make a public comment. So at the time I'll let them come up to the laptop I'm using.
Okay. All right. So I've got my list going and other people will be noted as they come in. Are we good to go then? Mike?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
So
we can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we should start the meeting.
Yep.
You want to call us into order officially?
All right. I'd like to call to order the Salem-Keizer Area Transportation Study. It is Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022. And I'm going to call off agencies for roll call since we're back on Zoom today. City of Salem.
Trevor Phillips here.
Thank you. ODOT.
Dan Fricke sitting in for Anna Henson.
Thank you. Salem-Keizer School District.
Maria Hinojos Pressy here.
Thank you. I'm here for the City of Keizer. It's Kathy Clark. Polk County. I see you, Lyle. You're waving. Can you unmute? Nope. Okay. Lyle is noted for the record. Marion County.
This is Cullum. I'm here.
Okay. Salem Area Mass Transit. Nobody here yet. Turner. Nobody here yet. 1, 2, who did I miss? I think that's everybody. Okay. I'm going to turn off my phone. And that will take us then to our first order of business, which is to approve the meeting minutes from October 25th, 2022. Were there any additions or corrections noted? Motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Trevor.
I'll second.
Seconded by Maria. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed,
Aye.
signify by saying no. Motion passes unanimously. This time is for public comment for members of the public to address the policy committee. And not Dan. Mike, do you have a list going or do I need to call for a raise of hands?
I only have one person here in the room that wants to give public comment. I imagine there's some people online who want to as well. Maybe we'll start with the person I have here in the room and then you can ask after that. So Sarah, do you want to come up and give your name for the record and your public comment? And let me move this so you can be seen.
Okay.
Okay, and that's
Right.
our policy committee.
Okay. Hello, my name is Sarah Doimling. I own a residence in West Salem and also a residence and a sawmill wood products business in Polk County. In addition to being a member of 350 Salem. I'm concerned that the focus of SKATS transportation planning is still stuck somewhere way back there. And I wrote down the 1950s, just, it seems like we're still very focused on the same things we were focused on then. When we increasingly and urgently need to rethink how we get around in order to reduce fossil fuel emissions as quickly as possible to prevent the worst effects of climate change. And some of us really do feel really strongly about this. We can and we must, but it's nigh on to impossible without leadership from folks like you. What we do as individuals just doesn't cut it the way you could. I urge you to follow the new LCDC rules and make your best effort to work with due haste to reduce vehicle miles traveled. Whoops.
That's not you. Go ahead.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
by 30% and to make fossil fuel, non-fossil fuel modes of transportation more accessible, more convenient, and safer for those who want to use them. Many of us are ready, more than ready, to accept or embrace any perceived inconveniences in order to ensure that we and future generations have an abundant and livable future in Oregon. The catch is that it is almost impossible to do this on a scale that makes a difference without leadership, and that leadership can come from you. In closing, I would like to share an anecdote. Though I'm a fifth-generation Oregonian, I have a lot of both friends and relatives in Germany to whom I speak often. Due to the war in Ukraine, are facing a major shortage of supplies of fossil fuel, particularly natural gas, as winter approaches. In the last few months, the citizens of that country have reduced their use of natural gas by 40% voluntarily, encouraged by the government, but they've done it by being smart, creative, and willing to adjust for the common good. I'm convinced that we are also capable of rising to the challenge for the sake of the future. Please lead us with all due haste in this direction. Put yourselves on the right side of history, and future generations will thank you. And I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Leave that with us, or
I can go make a photocopy.
You have a written copy?
this one's fine.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't need the rest of them.
Okay.
And before we go to the next people, I see one hand up. I do want to acknowledge for the record, we got a lengthy email from Mike. Do you have that?
Yeah, I got this about an hour ago. Let me just go back to my email system here.
So we'll have to read it later, obviously, because we just got it.
Yeah.
Forwarding
It was
public comment.
from, Laura Dougherty.
Doherty, okay.
Dougherty, excuse me. And I'm not going to read it, but most of it is focused on emphasizing safety is very important in our region. She gives a lot of references to articles, and you can read it later, but that's her focus on improving safety in the Salem-Keizer area.
Okay, so that will be acknowledged for the record. And we got another one from
Bill
rolling.
Carver,
Phil Carver.
right,
Okay,
which I forwarded yesterday to the group, and we'll have both of those in the public record for the plan.
Right. right. Those are acknowledged for public comment for the public record. Thank you. And I see Dr. Carver has your hand up. So would you like to be the next to testify?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair Clark and members of the Policy Committee of SKATS and staff for the Regional Council of Governments, the Mid-Willamette Valley. I appreciate the opportunity to provide oral comments. I'm just briefly summarizing the written comments, which are more extensive. Just as a background, I worked for the Department of Energy and the Public Utility Commission, and from 1988 onward until 2017 when I retired, I worked primarily on climate change issues, and we started on that in 1988 because James Hansen said that the 1990s he forecast they would be the warmest decade on record in terms of average air temperature for the globe. And that was a true forecast. And then the 2000 to 2010 decade was warmer than the 1990s. And then the last decade, 2010 to 2020, was warmer still. So this is real science, real predictions confirmed. We had hoped that maybe there would some sink would emerge, or that the effects would be less than predicted. They've been worse, and the recent developments have been very troubling, especially about Antarctica. And then then about 80% of counties in the U.S. have had some climate-related disaster or some strong storm. What we want the policy committee to do is make a policy shift and focus almost entirely on measures that reduce traffic, reduce emissions, and make biking, pedestrian, and transit ridership easier. And I noted in the written testimony, there are real strong trends in this direction that are occurring outside of SKATS in terms of the city of Salem terms of chariots increasing service, and then independent trends such as more telecommuting and internet shopping. This is a difficult task, but it's very, very difficult if SKATS continues to, quote, reduce congestion by expanding capacity of roadways. This has been shown to be very ineffective because people just move out farther and the commute times remain basically the same. So people will adjust to the congestion if you allow the congestion to exist. And it is not a catastrophe, but allowing climate change to continue is a catastrophe. And SKATS and local governments can play a unique role. And in fact, local governments have played the strongest role to date. But now the US government and the state of Oregon are very much on board, as demonstrated by the LCDC Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities rulemaking. And ODOT will soon join this effort under the new governor. So please, like Sarah just said, please shift your focus. And we have detailed comments on the survey that were listed as part of the agenda. I'll note that there were many projects that got no hearts. And some projects got 4 or 5, maybe, well, I think a couple got 6 hearts. And the comments strongly trended towards more emphasis on pedestrian, bicycle, and transit availability and ease of use. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Dr. Carver. Is there anyone else who would like to testify today? Either raise your hand in the on the screen. If you don't know how to do that, turn on your camera and do something to get our attention. All right, I see no one else who would like to participate in public comment, so thank you very much. We will then go on to item D, which is the SKATS fiscal year 21-26 TIP amendment. Karen.
So this is an amendment that ODOT is proposing in response to the lawsuit on the ADA Act. And as you know, that ODOT has made a priority of updating these curb ramps to meet the ADA compliance. And they've committed about $1.4 billion over the next 10 years to design and construct these ramps. This particular amendment is just a piece of that. So there is a project in Region 2, which is kind of the northwest area of Oregon, to design about 3,500 ramps. And that is actually divided into 2 projects. The project we're talking about today is one that's about 2,200 ramps. Well, I've got the numbers all wrong here where I can see it. The first rise is they'll go to those are the ones that are going to go to construction in 25 and 26. So they need to be in the current TIP. And the remaining ramps are in a project that's in the draft TIP. I know that's kind of gets confusing, but really it's just a project to design ramps. And the follow-on project will complete the ramps. About 738 of these ramps are within the SKATS boundary. And so the entire project has to be within our TIP. So it looks like for $22 million, we're not designing 738 ramps. For $22 million, we are actually designing 2,000 ramps, you know. So I'm not sure exactly how many of those are within the MPO. Could be the entire 738 of them. At any rate, we did receive 2 comments from the public when we put it out for public review. One of the commenters was a little confused about the cost and the 738 ramps, and I did explain to him that the cost was for the entire amount of ramps, not just the part that is within the MPO. We just have to have the entire project in the TIP. The second commenter was suggesting that ODOT not be so narrow-minded about just building ADA ramps, but actually expanding some of those accessible features to beyond ramps to include protected crossings and such like that. ODOT has Brandon is here in order to answer any questions if there are any questions on this amendment.
Very good. Thank you very much, and welcome, Brennan. Thank you for joining us today. It sounds like there might be some questions. Would you like to add anything before we go to questions from the board? Can't hear you. And while we're doing that, just to refer to the ADA ramp project table that was also included in your packet.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for letting me know about that. Yeah. So just a high level overview is the program is shifting to a different funding model. And so we're starting with a bucket approach to where we have all the projects that we're planning on constructing in a couple of year cycle into one project. And then as we start designing those ramps, we'll start breaking them out into separate projects. And so this project is to start that design phase. And then over time, we'll continue to add additional funding for the design of those. And then over time, once we figure out how we want those to be managed into smaller groups, and some of the considerations may be geographically, so it may make sense to do all of the Salem ramps in one project, or we may look at it and say, well, we're trying to distribute to get different sizes of projects so that different contractors are able to bid on the project. And so we've got lots of different things from a program standpoint that we're trying to be strategic. But this specific amendment is to start that design phase for a total of 3,000 plus ramps, and specifically the 700 plus in the Salem area are within your boundaries. So with that, any specific questions?
Well, I'd like you to elaborate on one thing, because I've gotten questions from people going, well, you already know what the ramp needs to be sloped at. Why does it cost so much money to design? And the city of Kaiser is like all the cities, we are doing ramps as well. Mm-hmm. And if you design one ramp, you've designed one ramp. Each one is very individual. Do you want to explain a little bit about that, to explain why this is such a hefty price tag for design as well? And then we've got construction on top of that.
Definitely. Really appreciate the question. As far as like the specific design per corner, we're looking at these as individual sites per corner. And predominantly that's because our tolerances are so tight. So when we're designing and looking at the slopes, literally if you put a penny difference of concrete in the slope, it could change it from a passing ramp to a failing ramp. And so we're designing the ramps so that we can prove to the contractor that the ramps are buildable within the areas that we provided them. And so we're essentially getting that so that we have biddable and buildable plan sets is predominantly the reason that we're doing the design work on it.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure that gets out there, because they're City of Kaiser, so these are on state highways, and people say, well, I already see ramps being done. And that's because the cities and counties already are doing that work as well.
Correct.
So we're going to see different projects on different in different jurisdictions. So I think it's important to get that out to the public as well. And this is a huge safety and accessibility project. Do you want to talk a little bit about that for folks that will be listening to this later or on the call?
Yeah, as far as the accessibility piece, or just the coordination, I guess I'll take that holistically, specifically pointing at from an accessibility standpoint. We ODOT want to make sure that any ramps on or along our facility, so that, to your point, that could be City of Salem or City of Kaiser ramp, but it's along our system. We want to make sure that that's accessible to all of our citizens, whether that be people who live and work in our communities or people who are visiting. And from the coordination standpoint, ODOT and the ADA program is going to be standing up a group where we're going to have, we're calling it strategic communications, where we're communicating first internally at ODOT to make sure that our messaging is the same, but also to the public and coordinating when we do have projects, you know, in Kaiser, Salem area, so that we're making sure that we're utilizing our resources the best, and the citizens are up to speed on, you know, what the projects are for and the purpose for those. And then also utilizing the resources between you know, city facilities, county facilities, and ODOT state facilities.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that additional explanation.
Yeah.
Questions from the board? Raise hands, unmute, sing out.
Hi, Kathy, excuse me here. So, hi, Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing great. Great to see you.
Great seeing you too. So what is the tolerance on building these ADA ramps? Is there a percentage that if I see a lot of them get built, they get torn out and rebuilt and they look
Right.
great? I don't hardly see any change in the new version.
Yep. So visually, a lot of these you know, look compliant from one aspect or another. It depends upon which slope you're looking at, which widths you're looking at. But from if you're actually going down the ramp, 8.33% is the construction requirement, and then our the smart levels that we're utilizing. If it says 8.34%. That's a non-compliant ramp. So if it's just a 0.01% higher, and then you've got the slopes coming down, and that's what that percentage is, and then you have the side slopes in addition to that, and then there are multiple other specs that we're looking at, but it literally is if you're just a hair over on those percentages, it's a non-compliant ramp. And specifically when we're constructing them and having contractors do that work, it would be at the contractor's expense to take that out and put in a compliant ramp. And so we're making sure that we're doing our due diligence, to utilize the public's money in the best way possible to get the compliant ramps. So, Commissioner, did that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Brennan? All right, looks like you've explained it well enough. Well, we don't have questions. I would entertain a motion to approve resolution 22-20 to add new project key number 22985, Northwest Oregon 2024 to 2027 ADA curb ramp design phase 1 to the SKATS fiscal year 2021 to 2024 TIP.
So moved.
Moved by Maria,
I'll second.
seconded by Trevor. Any further discussion? All in favor, please unmute, turn on your camera if you can, and signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Call him.
Said aye.
Okay, I didn't hear you. All right. All right. Any opposed, signify by saying no. Hearing no objection, motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us today. And
Yeah,
good luck.
thanks for your time and support. And if there's any questions, I'll drop my contact information in the chat, and feel free at any time to reach out. Thank you.
Very much appreciate. This is a great project.
Thank you. And you will see when you adopt the 24 tip that phase 2 was in that project, in that tip. So you'll be seeing it again. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, let's go to item E, which is the Salem Area Mass Transit Long Range Transit Plan. And I see Ted Stonecliffe has joined us, so is on the call. Thank you for being on here today.
Thank you, Chair Clark. Thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Ted Stonecliffe. I am a transit planner here at Chariots and the Deputy Project Manager for our Long Range Transit Plan project. To talk to you about our draft plan that we have developed over the last 15 months or so. I'll try to go quickly because I know you're busy today. We'll give an overview of the plan and the public engagement that was completed for the plan. What current and future services are outlined in the plan and next steps. Feel free to jump in with comments and questions during the presentation. Just use your electronic hand because I won't be able to see you if you're just waving. This is what is the Long Range Transit Plan? It is our first 20-year planning document for Chariots. Existing conditions are reported in chapters 1 and 2, and future services explored in chapter 3. The financial sources and opportunities are in chapter 4. Hopefully you're able to peruse the document before the meeting today. Implementation of the plan will occur in small increments, but the plan will be scheduled to be updated in a major way every 5 to 7 years. However, we do consider it a living document, and we'll talk more about that as we go on through the presentation. So the background of the document, we really want to focus on the Chariots vision, mission, and values. Chariots went through a strategic planning process over the last 6 months, and this was worked into the development of the plan, as well as our new vision, mission, and values that our board has come up with. We've also researched and consulted different agencies' documents, such as the SKATS Metropolitan Transportation Plan, local comprehensive plans, local transportation system plans, local climate action plans, and of course, our Oregon Public Transportation Plan. So there was a comprehensive review of these planning documents going into the document. Here's a table of kind of the schedule of how we view the updates to those plans. For public engagement, we had 2 major times for the engagement. One that was almost a year ago in the winter, December and January, and another in the summer of this year. We spoke with hundreds of folks, both writers and potential new writers, online, as well as taking paper surveys, presentations to community groups, as well as tabled events such as what you see here at a grocery store in Woodburn. Trying to reach out to those traditionally considered marginalized or disadvantaged communities, really trying to engage them in a meaningful way. And connection to the new writers mainly was done with a mass mailing of postcards. Over 12,500 were sent out to folks in Salem and Keizer, as well as cities in rural Marion and Polk counties. Some of the themes that came out of the public engagement, really looking at frequency of service. People, it didn't matter whether they were in the urban area or in our rural cities. People want to see that bus coming more frequently. They want to have more access, as well as affordability. Low fares came up quite often. Technology improvements were such as electronic fare, the ability to pay on your phone, as well as real-time bus arrival information. We'll look a little bit at who we serve currently and in the future. These maps show population and employment densities for Marion and Polk counties, and really we're focused on the denser areas, those areas that are outlying or not as needed. So one thing that we did look at for our regional system, so I'll just talk about a little bit of our modeling. When we're looking out into the future, we need to form a base year, which we call our no build. And this map shows our no build for the regional system, you can see in very faint green there on the lower left, the Monmouth Independence trolley was included in that modeling, as well as our new ADX route from Kaiser to Wilsonville via Woodburn, and a couple of local routes in Woodburn. And then for the local system, basically the existing system today, but also some small improvements such as connector route in pink in South Salem, going from the Almsville Highway area through Mill Creek Corporate Center over to the Costco area and Commercial Street. So we'll talk a little bit about the future services outlined in the document. There's a lot of text on this screen, so you don't have to read all of that. We're going to walk through each one. But transit network is the first one, where we're talking mainly about frequency. And I think what we heard in our public outreach, as well as just thinking about it, staff internally, these frequency improvements wouldn't be just during the weekdays, but also on the weekends, where currently there may be a gap of service, like we don't run a certain route on Saturdays. Well, when future funding becomes available, this document is really outlining where the priorities would be to add service. So mainly focusing on frequency, but also looking at a little bit of additional geographic coverage. And we'll get into details of that as presentation continues.
I have a question.
Yes.
You're talking about frequency. Did you also look at, or was it separate, looking at the expansion of hours? Or was that?
You mean the hours of service, like during the day?
Correct.
Thank you, Chair Clark, for that question. Yes, both the frequency and what we call span of service. So today we operate from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. And if we were at 100% pre-pandemic levels, it would be 11 p.m. But yes, that was something that is covered in the document, as well as what we heard from people who need to get to work earlier, or maybe they work a swing shift and they're not able to get home on transit as it currently stands, because we don't run that late. So yes, thank you. So we also look at bus stops and transit centers, not only our standard stops, but also what we call super stops and mobility hubs, where you might have more than one route coming together at a super stop, where you need to facilitate those transfers, but you don't have enough room to build a transit center that's off street. And so this is a new concept that we haven't explored in depth yet, but mainly applicable to the areas along our core network. And when I say core network, that has a formal definition, but in general, it's the major streets that operate our frequent service that operates every 15 minutes or better in Salem and Kaiser. A mobility hub is a place where you not only have transit service, but you facilitate that transfer to a different option, such as bike share or car share. Maybe there's a partnership between transit and transportation network companies, such as Uber or Lyft, where it's a lower fare to ride an Uber to get to your bus stop, and then you can pay with your mobile app for both services. So that's something that's explored in the document as well. Customer information and fares is something on our near-term horizon, but also medium and long-term. We want to be more competitive with our technology. The diagram on the right here, you can see, is an example of what Lane Transit District in Eugene Springfield is doing. They have the UMO card system, which is the same vendor that Chariots will be implementing sometime in 2023 to be able to pay your fare electronically, either with a card or with your app on your phone. And this will also enable us to partner with third-party organizations to rent a bike from major transit stops, or like I said, work with Uber or Lyft to facilitate that transfer, to close the gap where many people find it hard to get to transit because it's too far for them to walk, or they don't feel safe in that trip. So that is some of the technology that we're looking at. Also, real-time arrival information would be available in a different app. Let's see. Let's move on to the next one. When we talk about flexible mobility, these are options such as flex routes, van pooling, and ride-hailing partnerships. An example is pictured here in Independence, where we have Route 45. So this is a service that's operating today, but it has a fixed path, and somebody is able to call our call center and ask the bus to come a little bit closer to them to pick them up to 3/4 of a mile off of that route. So this is one model. Another model is what we call micro transit, where you have a zone of service. It's more of an on-demand kind of service instead of scheduled, where using an app on your phone or calling customer service, you would be able to book a trip the same day and have the bus come and pick you up, and most likely take you to a major bus stop where you would transfer to our fixed route system. So other ideas are integrating e-scooters and bike share, trying to solve that first mile, last mile problem for transit. Transportation options are covered in the document, really encouraging walking and biking to transit, and how do those options work with employers? The Group Pass program is highly underutilized in our service area currently, and we really want to see that grow. So this is a program where employers of any size could participate by purchasing bus passes for all of their employees for $5 or $6 per employee, and they're able to ride with that transit pass during the month as much as they like. This is a system that would align with climate action plans that are being developed and have been developed. And so that's one strategy that is highlighted in the document.
Ted?
Yes.
If I could. So speaking of the Group Pass program, I used to, when I worked downtown, I was provided a bus pass by the state since I worked for a state agency. Has that come back? I don't work downtown anymore, but it was discontinued.
That's correct. Thank you for that question, Mayor Clark. Yes, the program that we had with the state was discontinued a number of years ago. It used to be that somebody who worked for the state could just flash their ID at the when boarding the bus, and they'd be able to ride for free. But the legislature discontinued that, and maybe Steve Dickey on the call could help me out with the timeline there. But unfortunately, we don't have that program currently anymore. But that certainly would be one example of a wonderful opportunity for us.
It made a lot of sense since it's one of our largest employers in the Salem-Keizer region. And with the concentration of employees in centralized areas around the office buildings, although many of us were able to shift to telework, that's not 100%. So I hope that the state of Oregon will re-engage with programs that they seem to want the rest of us to engage with. Steve, did you have something to add here?
If not, we can continue
He's
on.
muted. Okay.
No, nothing to add at this point. No.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
The document also talks about the future of our vehicle fleet and how the fleet would change. As many of you know, the Chariot's Board of Directors passed a resolution that the district should be operating 100% zero emission vehicles by the year 2040. And so in that line, the document talks about how to train staff, maintenance, as well as operations staff in that line, as well as expanding capacity for electric buses or other zero emission technologies such as hydrogen fuel cells. All right, we'll continue on. And for next steps, we did present the draft document to our board of directors at their November 17th board meeting last week. And we'll be incorporating comments from them. And if we hear any comments from you today, as well as our technical advisory committee and citizens advisory committee, we'll be working with our consultant to incorporate those comments into the final document, which is scheduled for adoption at the December 15th board meeting, which is coming up very soon. So at this point, I can take any questions that may have come up and you would like to ask.
Thank you so much, Ted. And first of all, this was just groundbreaking for Chariots to engage in this work. We've had the pleasure of having one of your board members, Ramiro Navarro, on my monthly Coffee with Kathy program, and he's been able to get the word out that way about what's going on with Chariots, both currently and going forward. In the numbers that you were looking at for ridership, a very significant program began September 1st. And that was and I'm sure Maria with the school district is very aware and excited about the numbers we are seeing right out of the gate with the youth bus pass program. It's not even a pass, it's you're a youth, you're on the bus. And the number I heard that since the beginning of this program, 67,000 rides to date. That is a very significant number in my book. I don't know where it falls in the Chariots ridership, but it's exciting to see our young people waiting for the buses at any time in the afternoon so they can participate in after school programs. So is that incorporated in your long range plan to continue and expand?
Yes, it is. And also other aspects of the fare structure where we would be potentially, now this has to go to our board for approval, of course, but potentially unifying our fare structure. So not having a different fare for our regional and local systems, but bringing our regional fares down to the local fares, which would allow somebody to travel from a rural area that we serve into the Salem-Keizer area or vice versa for the same price. And so we're excited for that. That's a preview of what's to come. That should be going to the board for the first reading of the fare structure scheduled in December. And in that new fare structure, a continuation of this pilot program that we started in September with the school district and the cities of Salem and Keizer, that would be continued and funded continuously, at least for the next 2 years. So we're very excited about that.
We're loving it. Lyle, I see that you unmuted.
Yeah, thank you. So Ted, have you put a dollar figure of investments for your long range plan? Do you have any idea costs over the years?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Morhorst. This document is, I want to say, specifically vague on this subject of particular dollar values because of the uncertainty of the costs of operating and purchasing vehicles in the future. That said, we are developing a financial plan, a financial forecast for the district over the next 6 months or so. And I'm told that once we have that financial forecast complete, that will be something that we would be incorporating into this document. But at this time, we don't have any specific dollar figures to share. So it's really a high-level policy document talking about the different technologies and the different preferences of the public, where transit is desired to be in 20 years. But you're absolutely right. We need to figure out what the commitment is going to be to get there. And so stay tuned on that subject.
Fantastic. Trevor, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair Clark, and especially thank you, Chair Clark, for highlighting the success of the Student Pass program. I know that now Mayor Chris Hoy's motion at our last budget finalization in June to get that here in Salem was really a good idea. In my opinion, it helps not just in terms of meeting goals for climate action, but also equity and youth support. So I think it's really good. And thank you, Ted, for being here today. And please convey, my personal deep appreciation for the joint work session we had back in September between the City of Salem and the Chariots board. I thought that was very helpful to continue our mutual goals and to try to make some progress. My kind of smaller comment is just on one of the first slides you showed. There were some colors that were similar in terms of like proposed additional routes in the future versus current routes. But just to plug again, as I have before, there's certainly a need for some Southeast Salem connectivity on that route list right there that you've got back up. I know that to get from my part of town in South Salem out to the Mill Creek area, you've got to take multiple connectors, and it takes an hour and 20 minutes plus to get out there. So I certainly look forward to having a new transit center in South Salem and having that additional service to the constituents down here in South Salem.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Yes, and let me remind you that this map just shows what we used as our baseline. So this is more like a short-term map of what we're hoping to do in the next few years. Again, we've been deliberately unclear. I don't want to say unclear, just basically with the future 2043, we don't have a map that shows what transit may look like in 2043 because of the uncertainties and the different decisions that would have to play to form a transit network. So there's so many balls up in the air for funding as well as political will. It's a work in progress, but maybe in our next version we will have a map. But for now, you can look at this one for the short term, and yes, we are looking at forming that connection for South Salem over to the Lancaster Drive corridor, and we're very excited about that.
I wish you swift success in your endeavors.
I would second that. The other thing I'd love to highlight for folks is the other significant change over the last couple of years was the addition of Saturday and then Sunday service. And as I travel through Kaiser to see people waiting for buses to use them on Saturdays and Sundays has been very gratifying. It has really opened up life choice opportunities for people who on weekends were really pretty trapped. So that has been a huge add. And again, for our youth and young adults, again, that is their opportunity to get to work and to where they need to go and other activities that happen on the weekends. So big plus there. And I think as far as those being illustrative of proof of concept, I think those are very helpful successes. Any other questions for Ted before we let him go? And we do have the link. If you want to put the link to the long range plan into the chat, so everybody who's on the call today will have that and it will get into the recording, that would be really helpful too.
Thank you, Chair Clark and everyone.
All right, thank you. Let's go on now to the SKATS 2023-2050 MTP project evaluation and list. Ray.
All right, thank you. Let me boot up a little slides. Last month, we talked about the project list that is proposed for the, or being considered for the SKATS 23 to 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And we've had about a month and a half of review by the public and the TAC on these projects. Started about October 5th and ran into last week. Notice was given via the normal methods that we do, emails, COG website, COG Facebook, etc. And on the map, the information allowed people to read about what the projects were, to provide a comment, and have likes. And those options are shown in the memo at the back on the, with the table where the shows the votes, and then it has a summary of the, it has all the comments, and then it has all the projects and which ones actually got a vote, with one maxing out of, I believe, 7. During this time, we've worked with the TAC on identifying projects that are local priorities, and they've been checking the list to ensure that all those are would be included as projects in the financially constrained project list for the long range plan. We're also been refining the list due to the recent funding uncertainties that we've been talking about for the last several months regarding cost overruns and the like, and how that all plays out on projects, especially in the short term, where we aren't necessarily confident that they will be, the bids will come in at the cost that we were estimated, that there will be inflation, and what that would mean to the funding for those projects. This is just showing a rough flow of how projects were evaluated. All the projects were evaluated based on the goals. We've presented those results to you last month. And then the jurisdictions reviewed these and identified the priorities and assigned funds to the higher priority ones. All the remaining projects that weren't assigned local funds were ordered by the evaluation, and we did a first pass with SKATS funds and have had that out to review for the locals. Just to give you an idea of how much money is being talked about and for the projects. So this is showing as of yesterday, the project list, which is slightly different than what was mailed out to you. So, we have roughly 39 million in projects in Kaiser, 1.2 billion in Salem, a little over $1 million in for Turner, and Marion County has about $356 million in projects, and Transit 32, ODOT is separate. And then there's about 516 million in projects that are illustrative. There's not enough funds available to do those. We currently have a surplus of around 4 million, which I'm confident will be eaten up by the next project that gets a bid received. And so I'm not assigning any more funds. We had a total of 229 million, and this table is just showing where the SKATS funds went to the local jurisdictions. ODOT, of course, doesn't receive any funds from us. They give us funds to distribute to the local jurisdictions. Hey, peanut gallery behind me. Speaking of ODOT, they have about $140 million in Region 2 funding over the next 27 years. Plus, they'll have funds from any legislative directed funds that typically are associated with increases in the fuel taxes or other ways of raising revenue. Plus, there's additional funds that could be allocated from headquarters to projects in the area, such as Center Street seismic or the back roads on 22, and of course I-5 Cooler to Delaney. Transit has about $189 million in funds. Most of these are local and FTA. This is mainly going for vehicle replacement is the primary expense. They also have been receiving earmarks in the recent years and grants for additional vehicles. So we anticipate that they'll keep up that. Kim, this is now your cue to talk about the public comments received, which form the bulk of the packet. Thank you.
All right. Yes, thank you. So it usually does, it's my job to collect comments and assemble them. And in just briefly, you have the full set of comments that were received from our online map that are in your packet. I will say that the Xerox copy doesn't do great justice to the highlighting that's on there. Usually when I summarize comments or I get them, I try to look for either a general trend of comments that are by category or type, or if one or another falls to a top of a list or a bottom of the list. In general, these comments were well distributed over all of the projects that we had listed on the map. And that is in part because we did receive comments from 350.org on basically all of the projects that were shown with, and I would summarize their comments in general of saying that they were supportive, most supportive of bike and transit projects to be elevated first, built first, and that to no roadway expansion or to not necessarily needed roadway expansions or road development from the summary. So, and you can see in the packet, you've got there's approximately 260 comments that were received and a handful of sort of generalized comments that are at the very beginning. So because there wasn't one particular project or another that wound up with an exceptional number of comments, they are provided to you just basically sorted by the project number, which means that they're by the jurisdiction. So they're sorted first the transit projects, then Marion County's projects, Salem's projects, et cetera, as they come through. So just very briefly, and then of course we also included those projects that received kind of what we call the heart or the vote on them. Approximately half got a like, at least a one like. We don't have an opportunity for you to vote down a project on the map, so it's only a vote up. And you can see that the project that came in at the top was Market Street Commercial to Hawthorne for bike ped facilities. So just a brief summary. Included also in your packet is that we did receive an email that was received from SCAN of their comments, and we've provided for you Phil Carver's comments, which were emailed to you yesterday. And of course, Lori, who's attending right now, said that she had just emailed. We'll provide those and they'll be part of the public record. We'll forward those again. So just in summary, those are what we had. Any questions?
Thank you, Kim. And once again, a tremendous effort on your part. Any questions from the board? All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Chair,
Yes.
so it's Mike Jaffe, MPO. The action today is really to see how the policy committee is with the current status of the list, which is currently being refined over the last few months, and will probably be refined a little bit more. There's a schedule in your packet about where we're going with this list. And let's find it again. It's in the memo. Oh, thank you. It's also on the screen. So, today's for you to take a look at that list of projects which Ray sent out last week, both in Excel, so you can sort it if you want, or filter, and also as a PDF. Get some feedback from you either today, or you can contact Ray as needed. If necessary, we discussed last month about having a special meeting in December. I did send out what's the name of it? Doodle poll. I didn't get many responses. I got a few responses, but I didn't get responses from everyone. I didn't check it yesterday, honestly, but we could schedule something in December if the policy committee wanted to spend more time going over the list. Our intention going forward, whether we have that December meeting or not, is to go with the list we've created, start our consultation with the resource agencies as needed, as part of our consultation requirement as an MPO, and then do other chapters of the next chapter for the plan, which is the proposed system, which basically describes all these projects on the system that is in the list that we sent. And then we, as you can see, in February, we complete the final drafts of the plan, and that's when it starts coming back to you. You start seeing the full draft of the plan. Is that right? Yeah. So then we do more formal public review and so on and so forth, going all the way to May. So I guess the question for you is, how comfortable are you with the project list at this moment? Do you want to have a meeting in December, or would you rather just send individual comments to us as staff? And then we will go forward with the items you see on the screen.
So personally, I look at where the Kaiser projects lay, and to make sure that, since most of them are great streets, full streets, multimodal, I just want to make sure that they remain in the queue and remain in a strong place to move forward with design and construction. So that's the only thing I'm going to look at. I'm not going to judge the projects from Marion County or City of Salem. I think that each of them needs to look at how this goes with their specific plans, but that's kind of where I'm at. Colin,
Chair Clark, can I just add one more thing before we go on?
Yes.
We have been working with your staff on all of these projects. First we did the scoring, but then staff had directions on prioritization beyond the scoring. So we moved things, maybe into the included list or out of the included list based on their input. And of course, that scoring and these lists are always flexible. So even if we go forward from here and in March you say, oh, I think this project needs to be moved, we can make those accommodations. And that's part of the public comment period too. So changes can be made to the list through this whole process. But if you want a more intensive discussion, we can schedule that. So I'll stop talking now.
All right, Commissioner Colin.
Thank you, Chair Clark. We're also comfortable with the Marion County projects in the plan. I would be concerned if we evaluated projects purely based on, bike ped get funded and roads don't get funded, which it sounded like there were some folks advocating for. I think we just have to look at what's best for each of our communities and for the people that live there. So I'm comfortable with where it is right now.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments on the process? I'll go to Maria and then to Trevor.
Thank you, Chair Clark. Yeah, I mean, since like the area that I represent just kind of covers like, you know, Kaiser, Marion County, and Salem. The only input that I really kind of felt a little bit strongly about was that I was hoping on the projects, and I'll just give the RTSP key because I think that might be the easiest way to share them out, is M058, M059, K022, and M017 with the roundabout. I know that they're in the illustrative portion, and I was kind of hoping if maybe those could be some that we could bump up a little bit. Other than that, like, I like the way that like the list is going. Of course, like I'm a huge fan of the bicycle pathways between the schools, and that makes me really excited. And also, like, I think y'all have done a really good job. Staff has done a really good job in terms of like balancing what is needed here in the community and what is supportive of making sure that our kiddos are able to get to school safely. But yeah, so those 4 projects, or 3 if we just did M058, M059, and K022, because I noticed that they were in the illustrative. And I think it'd be nice if they got bumped up a little bit.
Yeah, Director Pressey, can you say those numbers again? Ray was trying to write that down. I think you got 3 of them.
M058, it's the Marion County sidewalks facilities.
Yeah.
M059, same thing, and then K022 was the city of Kaiser, Fair to Lane.
Right.
Was there a 4th one, or I thought I heard 4 numbers. Did you have a 4th one, or just those 3?
I also had M017, but if we did a roundabout, I was thinking about it. But I mean, I think maybe just those 3 that I mentioned would probably be best to get bumped up.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Councilor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair Clark, and thank you, Mike, for the comment that this is a living document. It could be updated even in future months from now. Broadly speaking, I support staff. I'll do my best to actually follow through and schedule a meeting with Julie. I know that she's been working hard and representing Salem well, but I feel comfortable with just submitting written comments offline. I don't think we'll need a meeting in December. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm getting from a majority of people that we're in a good space for moving forward with the list as it is evolving. They're going to continue to adjust as we look at construction costs, right-of-way acquisition, and design considerations. But I think that the Kaiser ones are pretty much in alignment with where we are looking at our interconnectivity on a multimodal scale.
Yeah. And so later today, assuming my internet still works, or tomorrow when I'm back home, I'll send out the latest revised list to everyone. Does everyone, do you want, is Excel or PDF, which I don't know which version is better for everyone to review, but it will have the latest revisions to the costs based on what's going on, and reflects what I've talked about today and making the $4 million, having that $4 million buffer, and reflects all the discussion I've had with your staff since we sent out the packet. So if Excel is fine, then it's much easier, but I can also send out a PDF. Granted, it will be a very large PDF when you try to print it out, if you try to print it out.
We're not going to print it because we're going to be conscious about using paper, she said, and besides you can blow it up bigger. I would agree with Excel, but we'll go with what is comfortable for people, because we all know that people receive information differently. I want to acknowledge for the record that the Salem Kaiser Transit alternate, Sarah Duncan, is on the call, and invite Sarah to comment on the transit projects if you have something to add here. Good to see you, Chair.
Good to see you too. Thank you, Mayor Clark. Sorry, I'm a little bit of a last minute joiner. Unfortunately, Dr. Carney is not feeling well. So we don't have anything at this point in time to bring. I'll encourage, we will look over the refined list if there's anything else that I missed. Sadie and I did not get a lot of time to communicate before I came today. But I'm really looking forward to seeing that the comments are kind of, reflecting the direction that Chariots is hoping to go in, focusing on bike ped and really bringing the city up to a modernized standard there. So I'm really excited to look over the finalized list, and I just really appreciate everyone's work.
All right, thank you. We all wish Director Carney all the best as to feel better. That's not what we want. How do you want to spend a holiday or any week for that matter? Thank you. Commissioner Moorhorse.
So I would like to see the original list before all these changes were made, just to see how it compares to what we have presented in front of us today. And I just want to express Melissa concerned. I want to make sure we bring a balanced vision to these. I know we have a lot of congestion areas and stuff that really think needs to be focused on. That removing those congestions brings forward a safer place for pedestrians and bicyclists as well. And I'm representing 89,000 people that have to travel through there to get to work. A lot of commuters. And that very concerns me when we start focusing on bicycle and pedestrian with the limited amount of funds that we have. Hopefully we can find a good balance that we can utilize this money for the best of all of us.
I can include the original list and also show all the changes that have evolved, have taken place. But more likely you'll just want to look at the original and then the final one. So that will be included in the Excel file.
Thank you, Ray.
No problem.
And Ray, another thing is that, most of us are familiar with our own jurisdictions and kind of know where these projects fit in our transportation system plan. So, the one-off saying this looks good by itself, and why is it in a specific order? That's because when you're looking at the whole of a jurisdiction, there are certain things that are going to make sense to roll out in a certain order. The two that are top for Kaiser being Verda and Wheatland, those are multimodal and they also impact multiple schools. So that's why they're top of mind for Kaiser. And I know that City of Salem, Marion County, Turner, all have had similar, and Polk County, how are we addressing the whole of our jurisdiction? So I really appreciate the work by the policy makers and by staff in looking at that holistic picture. I think it's really reflected here in the project list. So very happy with that. Trevor, your hand's still up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Clark. And I agree with Commissioner Mordhorst. I think that getting, the comparison between the two is a good suggestion. And I'm fine. I would prefer probably Excel. It's a little easier to navigate through with this big of a document. I guess my question comment is in regards to the Salem bond that just passed. Was really pleased to get such strong support from the community. Nearly 65% of the voters endorsed the bond. So yes, we can look forward to $300 million of predictable funding over the next 10 years. So just very grateful to the voters and staff and my fellow colleagues in the council, getting that through and getting the trust and communication out to the community. My question to Ray and Mike and others is, do we have a sense yet already of how that'll impact, the list in terms of, having projects funded through that funding source? Like, is it already being incorporated in the plan?
Yes, the bond measure projects are already included, and in the spreadsheet, you can actually sort under, I believe it's funding, it will say yes, go. And that's all the general obligation bond projects that passed that are relevant for the regional system. There are some projects like bridge replacement or pavement that we're not including, but the bigger ones are included. And I am glad it passed because then I didn't have to create a second spreadsheet with the reality where those projects are not funded right now and we push off your bond measures. So, yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Anything else you need from us today?
No, I will send you out a Thanksgiving present for everyone to, because I know you just love looking at project lists while eating turkey. It's not quite pork, but you never know. But thank you for your review, and we'll talk with you in January.
Pork, quinoa, I don't care as long as the money is green and the projects get done. All right. Thank you, Sarah. And then thank you all. So let's go on to item G, which is the river crossing content for the 2023-2050 MTP. Mike and Ray.
Yeah, it's mostly going to be me today. And so in your agenda packet is a memo. Actually, I wrote it with Ray, not Karen, and we put the wrong name on it.
I do everything.
Yeah, those little mistakes happen.
We know that.
So the big picture is that we're updating the plan, and in two areas of the plan, we talk about the river crossing, both in the needs and gaps section in chapter 5, and then outstanding issues. And so we had that section written about the bridges in our 2019 plan. 4 years has passed. Those who know about the history of the bridge EIS know that it eventually had a recommendation of no build as the final EIS and record of decision. So we wanted to update those two chapters, chapter 5 and 9, to better reflect the current status of the river crossing, the whole kind of summary of the history of the need for a bridge, but also the efforts to do the EIS and the final decision about that, as well as the other efforts to improve the arterials on both sides of the bridges to ease congestion through that corridor. So that's the intent of this rewrite of those two chapters. Like I said, it has some of the history, it goes through the EIS, you know, the situation has been updated. The graph that you see on page 3 of the traffic volumes is kind of interesting to look at. It shows the increase of traffic, and this is traffic on daily traffic for both directions on the bridges. So adding up both bridges volumes, and you know, increased from the 80s to 44,000. Pretty rapid increases during the 80s and 90s. Started flattening out in the 2000s as we had the recession. We had big gas increases and slowdown in development. But then it did pick up again in the late 2000s, 2016, 17, 18. Topped off in 2019 to around 96,000 volume. And then when COVID hit, it dropped down to 80,000, but then has bounced back up to 90,000 in 2021. So that really tells a story of traffic on that bridge and how reflective it is of circumstances, both within our control as far as development, but things also out of control like COVID and the recession. So the chapter goes into, I'd like to point out the things that we have done to improve things on the bridge area, and that's on page 4. So it goes through everything from the bridge engineering study, which I led back in the late 90s, and the kind of improvements we made for the ramps, the multiple improvements City of St. Louis ODOT did on Wallace Road to improve traffic flow, all the pedestrian and bike facilities that have been done, everything from the Union Street Railroad Bridge to the development of the Union Street bike-friendly corridor, the land use studies that are going on and still going on to bring more development into the downtown area of West Salem and commercial development in order to have a better balance between housing and jobs, and so on and so forth. I won't read the last two. And then in chapter 9, outstanding issues, we talk about how, or I talk about how in this rewrite, it goes into more detail about the EIS And it kind of sums up to say that we'll have a lot of near-term projects to assist with other modes of travel on the bridge. And like the Union Street Family Friendly Bikeway, maybe expansion of local and regional transit service. However, we still, without a new bridge, given the trends, we still, trends of growth, especially in West Salem and Polk County, we still expect a continual increase in volume on those two bridges. And so that'll probably mean, more delay in the downtown area, more delaying on Wallace Road and Highway 22. So that's just my reflection of what I think is going to happen. And I wanted to put it out there for any comments about from the policy committee. If you have comments, feedback, anything that I left out that you want to put in is regarding that corridor. And I'll stop there and see if there's questions.
All right, questions, comments? Trevor.
Thank you, Chair Clark, and thank you, Mike. I mean, this seems like the summary under item G seems like an accurate summary of the reality where we're at. I appreciate sharing this information and having the opportunity to discuss it now. I mean, I just don't see a path forward for the specific Salem River crossing proposal. And, it wasn't supported by council several years ago. I don't see it coming back in that form. But at the same time, I do think that we will need another route across the river in the future. So I think acknowledging the reality of that, specific proposal is important to get us to the next step. In the short term, I'm so grateful again that the bond passed and we can, really work on completing Marine Drive and getting that Union Street bike ped corridor to connect West Salem all the way to the 12th Street Promenade. I guess my question would be, in my summary just now, and paraphrasing this, am I missing something, or did I capture the gist as I think I'm reading it?
I think those two projects you mentioned are going to be important ones. I think I did mention Marine Drive as something else the city is doing to ease traffic flow in West Salem. It's all those smaller projects are all, part of a solution. There are other things we can do to, improve things. The city of Salem did have their congestion relief task force, which had a number of items in there. I don't think anything has been specifically developed yet, but there are those sort of things that can be done as well. So I think I mentioned that in the list. So the news is kind of good and bad. We didn't come to a consensus on a new bridge location, but we are doing everything else we can think of to ease congestion, everything from TDM and transit and bike ped and actual new roads like Marine Drive.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Commissioner Willis. Calm.
Thank you, Chair Clark. I just, I guess I just want to say that an additional crossing over the river is a really important thing to me. That's a really important thing to my fellow commissioners. And so I think we just want to make sure that, like, our view is that this is essential for our region. Having an additional crossing is essential for our region.
Okay, thank you. I do have one question. Oh, Commissioner Mordhorst. Hello?
So, and Trevor, I appreciate your opinion on that bridge, but that bridge had total consensus throughout the whole Willamette Valley on that location. And everybody had voted for it and looked forward to, except for the city council. And that was saddens me when we had so many millions of dollars and so many years invested. That was the third time to try to get a crossing into Salem, till really fourth time. That's a lot of history to have one board to eliminate it. So that's a pretty hard pill for a lot of us to take, but that third crossing is going to be crucial as the Willamette Valley continues to grow. And we are, I heard best, the Mid-Willamette Valley is in everybody's way. To get north and south on I-5 or east and west of the coast, you come through the Mid-Willamette Valley. And that's what we need to address. All of the tourism is one of our biggest financial gains that we have for Willamette Valley. It's one of our largest employers is those tourists. So I just hope that we can figure out a way to find that quickly, but I know it's gonna be another 20 years. We had to start all over. So moving forwards, hopefully all of us can agree.
Thank you. Counselor Phillips?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Clark, and thank you, Lyle, Commissioner Mordhorst, for your comments. I mean, I agree, we do need another route across the river, and I want to work, in good faith on coming up with a solution that will work. So, I'm here and ready for that conversation to try to get a success on getting another reliable route across the river. I mean, we need it.
Sarah Duncan.
I'm all are in agreement. There's a need, and I'm going to just bring up the safety concerns. We know that we're due for a large earthquake, and the likelihood of losing resources across the river is something that we have to contend with. And having a secondary option across the river could really be something that saves lives in the event that happens during our lifetimes. And I just want to highlight that piece that we sometimes forget, that we can become isolated so quickly. And I don't want we want to just keep that in mind as we're, looking at the timelines and the ability to move forward, is that we want to be prepared when that day happens, and that we have done everything that we can to make sure that both West Salem and is connected enough to the rest of Salem so that they can have the resources they need. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Sarah. Maria, proceed.
Oh, no, I was just saying that I'm going to have to hop off here in just a minute because I got to head out at 1:30. But I guess since I have the floor anyway, I completely agree that I would also very much like to see if there's some way to bring something forward to have an additional bridge, because yeah, I'm also really concerned about the concept of just being so isolated and having some of our community just be so isolated from necessary resources like hospitals and all of any of the other things that are very much needed in a tragedy.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your work today. These were all points that were brought up during this process, and were supported by many partners in and around Salem, and we'll see what the future brings. I do have a question, and that was regarding the freight routes. Being an agricultural hub for the state of Oregon, getting goods to market continues to be key. I know that the Millersburg, the transload facility down there is not yet operational. Is there an anticipation of how that may be relieving some of the need for trucks to have to move through Salem, since our bottleneck is going to cost time and money for our agricultural industries, which are a backbone for the Mid-Willamette Valley?
In OMPOC, we talked about is it transload? What's the right term? Intermodal.
Intermodal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Down in Millersburg, which my understanding was it was on the precipice of opening. And was going to focus both on exports, but also some importing too. That was something new. Mostly they focused on exporting of agricultural goods to Asia and whatnot, but they're going to talk about importing too. I asked that question of ODOT if they could model that area to see if it'd be a change in truck traffic, and the response was that they didn't think they could in their statewide model reliably predict how much it would divert truck travel in our area. So that's the response they gave me. I think we could probably expect some changes, but right now we can't give you any kind of numbers.
Well, I think similar to Portland, which has become a freight bottleneck to the point where it's harming our local economy, our small businesses, and our agricultural economy. The same thing with Salem being a place where trucks need to go through. If they can avoid Salem, like trucks very much want to avoid Portland, find a way to help our freight move without being stuck. Last time I checked, they don't really shop at Macy's, and they don't need to be stuck downtown. That's my 2 cents worth. And we'll definitely push for the interchange rebuilds at Aurora and Brook Lake, which will facilitate our ability to move freight efficiently without them having to be in our core areas. The Newburgh Dundee bypass, I think finishing phase 2 will be a significant help with that, to get trucks out of the middle of town along that corridor as well, and hopefully increase safety and our ability for our agricultural goods to get to market. So that's a big plus. That's a big push from the city of Kaiser, is how do we help our freight, our agricultural community succeed?
Yeah, and on the safety and security issue of the bridge, you should all be aware that the Center Street Bridge is scheduled for a seismic upgrade. They did some in-water work this summer, start the design work, and construction right now is scheduled for 2025. And I was pleased to see in the state tip, there is $100 million for the project. So it may cost more than that, but we won't know more until the design gets done.
Okay. All right. Any other comments before we go on to item H? All right. Item H was the SKATS 2023-2024 UPWP, which is our Unified Planning Work Program. And we do this every year. We plan our work and work our plan.
That's correct. So it's one of the requirements for having our planning funds is to have a document that describes our work program. This describes the period from July of 23 to June 2024. And in the memo that I sent out, you see a schedule, which includes a review of this outline in November. Staff writes up the full document and will present that to you in January. Then it has some federal review and then gets adopted usually in April. So the content changes every year. Some things stay, some things continue, some things are done all the time, like modeling and data collection. I'm just going to highlight a few things in my outline and then see if you have any questions. As you know, we're going to adopt the plan in May 2023 when we have 4 years to update it from then, so 2027. In that 4-year period, staff will be busy primarily tracking the other planning activities like the Oregon Transportation Plan, the Oregon Highway Plan, and changes to local comprehensive plans. And all those changes will impact how we do our plan for 2027. Our SKATS tip will do the usual amendments to projects as we need to, make adjustments as costs change, et cetera, et cetera. We're starting to work on the Transportation Safety Action Plan. We had a kickoff in September, and that's going to go to 2024. You'll hear more about this as we start doing more public outreach on the safety plan. So that'll be a very important project that we are doing right now and will continue next year. The Cordon Road Corridor Plan, which had a recent open house, that's going to continue all the way to September 2023. And then the Oregon 2251 project, there was another open house on that. That's also in the SKATS area, so we'll be tracking the progress of that. The other bulleted points are the typical things we do year in and year out, including interagency assistance for our local partners in ODOT, modeling and data collection. We're doing a Oregon travel survey, which means a survey of households and their trip making, some by, most of them hopefully by a smartphone, but some in old-fashioned diaries. And we'll be doing about 1,800 in the Salem-Keizer area, but it's going on in the other MPO areas, Portland, Eugene, and also out in the non-MPO areas. So it's a whole statewide collaboration to do this. We do this every 15 years. And then the typical things about public participation, Title VI, et cetera. There's a section on metropolitan transit planning, which you just heard from Ted about their long-range plan, which got completed. Their next stage is to do some operational analysis, which they've highlighted, and also to continue working on the South Salem Transit Center as they move that project forward. and more fully implement their intelligent transportation system, which tracks the buses and provides real-time information to users and the district staff. So I really wanted to go over this fast in the interest of time, but if you have any questions, I can answer anything you have.
Thank you very much. All right, very comprehensive, and thank you for this executive summary, so we can get the high level. If people want to know which ones are currently underway, our current work plan is online, and all members should have received a copy, both print and electronic, at some point during this last year when we approved the one we are currently working on. So we want to make sure that people have that as a solid reference document. Okay, that takes us to item I, which is the OMPOC summary. And Commissioner Mordhorst, Mike Jaffe, and I were able to attend. It was all virtual. I do miss the old walking tours, but that day will come back. I have to go back. I'm going to go find my notes. Mike, do you want, or Lyle, dealer's choice, who wants to kick off?
Go for it, Mike.
You know what? I'm going to quickly ask that we do the tip modifications, and I'm going to go grab my notes.
Okay.
So can we do that, Chair? Okay.
Yes, we can. Let's go to Jay, our tip modification. Karen.
Well, actually, I was going to say there's 2 tip modifications. Just, you know, look at them. If you had any questions, I'd answer them. One was the one you'd seen last month and approved last month, and the other is just slipping a project on Center Street, because it is a little unclear whether or not that would be able to obligate in time. And to meet our obligation targets, we're going to slip that one. That one's due to a federal highway requirement on how right-of-way is purchased. So if there's any questions on that, that's all I have. Hopefully you guys can find your notes to the OMPOC meeting.
Well, I could not find them. I think they're on my laptop, which is down the hallway. So I'm just going to go be very general and by memory say that we discussed rail issues for a while, which has been a continuing hot topic. And we had a presentation from ODOT rail staff informing us about their progress on these issues, both within Oregon, but also nationally, because we're not the only state that has these issues with rail companies. We got updates from ODOT about their Oregon Highway Transportation Plan. You may be seeing emails from ODOT or from us saying that the Oregon Transportation Plan is now reached this kind of like last lap, where they've got a lot of the policies drafted, but they're going out for public comment on all those policies before they wrap it up and then bring it to the commission. And then we had the typical roundtables where each MPO updates us about activities within their MPO area. Sorry, I don't have my notes right now. I can send out my notes because I believe I typed them up on my laptop, which as I say, is in a different room. So
the one thing I will add, make sure I'm not muted, on the ODOT rail issue, and I really appreciated the rail coordinator being on and coming to talk to us, because we continue to have issues around the location of rail splitting communities, you know, and chicken or egg, which came first. It is what it is. And those changes are very costly to either build connections across them or route around. But one of the issues that I brought up, because they brought it up and it happened before with ODOT right-of-way, was to make sure that ODOT rail, if they needed assistance and support in conveying to the rail companies and USDOT that people camping in the rights-of-way is just as dangerous there as it was in the ODOT rights-of-way, and absolutely unacceptable to facilitate, ignore the conditions of people in our community being in squalor, danger, and just ignored like, well, there's nothing we can do about it, because we all know that is not true. Salem, Kaiser, Marion County, Polk County have worked very diligently through the Alliance to change the trajectory of service provision, safety, security, sanitation, and dignity for people in our community who are experiencing homelessness. So I was very pleased to see yesterday that crews were working with relocating people who had camped along one of the rights of way near the wetlands, near the Kroc Center. And we know that very compassionate, caring individuals take their time to work with each person individually to get them in a place where they can be safer, more secure, and receive services as they need individually. So I will really want to emphasize a big thank you to ODOT Rail for apparently taking us up on the offer and working to meet the needs of people who are in very difficult situations. So that was one of my big takeaways from OMPOC. The other one was the development of engaging in training once again for our incoming legislators. We're going to have another huge turnover in the legislature, and we always have to educate them on what is an MPO, what is an act, how are we, what do they do? What are their powers? What's their span of control and so forth? So we're going to have to be doing a lot of education for our any turnover in our legislative delegation, and to be prepared for that, and inviting everybody, elected and appointed officials, to engage with our legislature as they go into this long session. It is going to be long, and it's going to be complex, and to make sure that we are helping get ahead of that. And our COG is going to be first and foremost out there to provide great support for our legislators as a go-to for our 3-county region. So I want to get that out there, and watch for alerts from the COG, since all of us as SKATS members are also COG members, and we can really work collaboratively.
I believe the COG has arranged something for December 7th in the morning. I don't remember the time. I think it's the morning.
It's early. Yep.
Yeah, a coffee with, and we were inviting legislators to attend that event. And that's going to be at I believe it's at the CCBI offices, Chemeketa College Business and Industry, near the Cinnabar on Broadway, or is it High Street? Either High Street or Broadway, the same street.
Yes, it's high before it turns to Broadway. And when we did our legislative gathering recently, the legislators and candidates for legislature really appreciated having a space where they could meet with a bunch of people in a very efficient manner, have the conversations that they needed. It was very helpful for them, and we want to continue to be that resource on transportation issues. So again, what we were talking earlier about projects, we understand the scope of our projects and where they fit into the landscape of multimodal transportation in our communities. And we can tell them the story that goes with each piece and how it all weaves together, both in our individual jurisdictions, but also as our region. So watch for that opportunity to continue to build those relationships with our legislators. Those are the two main things that I remember. And then a lot of people are doing a lot of planning. A lot of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And the next one, I think, is February, January. I don't think
probably February. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chair Clark, I'd be happy to kind of polish my notes and send it out to the group.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
All right, let's go into other business then. So November 14th was the Ruby Ridges Walk at Bush Park Elementary. I saw that on Facebook. That looked fabulous. Councilor Phillips, anything on that? That was just wonderful.
I saw that Mayor Chris Hoy was able to attend, and he found it very moving. I've talked to him about it. Yeah, it's good event.
Yeah, I had a little slideshow, but given circumstances, I can't show it to you now. I'll show it to you in January, but we had the whole school turn out. Safe Routes to School kind of led that. It's a last minute scramble to get everything together, but the school is fantastic. They were so excited to join us on that project.
That
So
was
yeah,
beautiful.
pictures next time, but it was a wonderful event.
Well, look on Facebook. You can see those pictures now.
Yeah.
Open houses were held on November 10th for the Cordon Road study and November 16th for the Rick Rial Road to Dokes Ferry. We heard about the first. Anything quick on the Rick Rial to Dokes Ferry Road one?
Well, Commissioner Mordhorst was one of the, I guess, guests or hosts, I should say. And I was there for the whole thing as well. And they gave a really good presentation on the status of the interchange alternatives. I think there were 4 they're looking at, and they're trying to narrow it down to 2. Then they had questions from the public about both the interchange and the access restrictions, if they have backage roads, et cetera, et cetera. So a really good presentation. I don't know if it was recorded, but I believe the open house is still open as far as looking at the boards. You can see the different alternatives. And just a reminder, this interchange is mostly within the SKATS boundary. There might be a little bit of the study that's outside, but mostly it's in the SKATS boundary. So it's an important one for our area. And one I think we should bring up to the legislature.
And it was recorded. It's online. So
Okay.
they will be posting it if it has been already, but the open house is still going current for questions and comments. Make sure you go on there and take a look at it. All of the slides for the frontage roads, backage roads, access is all on there, full description, and then also contact information if you have questions, where to send your comments. And of course, I think my list is on there as well. So
yeah, and I learned a lot from the engineers, the consulting firm engineers' descriptions of why certain interchange design is the way it is. So very good
we've been
presentation.
watching the last 3 years. So all of that's on, and nothing's set in stone. We're still doing the final designs. And we're looking for those public input so we can make the best product possible for all of us. So
Fantastic. Much needed. Our next policy committee meeting then, because we all decided that we're good for December, will be on January 24th, 2023. The TAC, however, will meet in December. No rest for the wicked and the good don't need none. And that will be on December 13th, 2022. I wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving, happy holiday season, New Year, and look forward to continuing to work with you all into 2023. I was reelected, so here we go. We're in for another couple of years. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, thank you all so much. The time is 1:50 and we are adjourned.
happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.